Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the warm, strange world of Roman bathhouses, where getting clean was never really the point, and falling asleep in public was considered good manners. The air smells like wet marble, olive oil, and about 300 people who have been exercising without deodorant. You're standing at the entrance to one of Rome's great Thermae in the 2nd century CE. And honestly, you probably wouldn't last an hour here without committing at least a dozen social mistakes you didn't know existed. The afternoon sun hangs heavy over the city, turning everything golden and slow. Shadows pool in doorways like spilled wine. Street vendors call out their final prices before the real heat of the day forces everyone indoors, or rather into the baths, which is where any sensible Roman spends the hottest, slowest part of the afternoon. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from. What time is it there? Are you winding down for sleep, or are you already half dreaming? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're wearing a simple tunic, nothing fancy, because you're not a senator or a wealthy merchant. You're just an ordinary Roman with an afternoon to kill and a body that needs washing. Well, washing in the loosest possible sense. The building before you is massive. Columns rising like a forest of stone, steam curling from vents in the roof, the sound of echoing voices and splashing water drifting out through the open doors. This isn't just a bathhouse. It's a social club, a gym, a library, a restaurant, a political forum, and apparently a very public bedroom all rolled into one marble-clad complex. The entrance fee is laughably cheap. A quadrans, the smallest coin in circulation, roughly equivalent to paying a nickel to spend the next 4 hours in a heated palace. The emperor subsidizes these places because keeping the masses clean, entertained, and too relaxed to riot is apparently good policy. You hand over your coin to a board attendant who barely glances at you. He's seen 1,000 people today already, and the afternoon crowd is just beginning. Inside, the noise hits you first. It's not quite a roar, more like a constant hum of humanity. Conversations bouncing off vaulted ceilings, the slap of water against tile, someone singing badly in a side room, the periodic scrape of metal on skin that you'll understand soon enough. The light comes in shafts through high windows, catching the steam and turning the air into something visible, something you could almost touch. The temperature is perfect, not yet hot, but warmer than outside, like stepping into a giant's exhale. You follow the flow of bodies deeper into the complex. Everyone seems to know where they're going, moving with the practiced ease of daily ritual. Because that's what this is, a daily ritual. Most Romans come here every single afternoon, not weekly, not occasionally, but every day. It's as non-negotiable as breakfast, except it lasts 3 or 4 hours and involves significantly more nudity. The floor beneath your sandals is heated, not uncomfortably so, but enough that you notice, enough that your feet start to relax before the rest of you does. This is the hypocaust system. Hollow floors with hot air channeled beneath them from furnaces tended by slaves you'll never see. It's brilliantly simple engineering that won't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. But right now, you're just thinking that warm floors are absurdly pleasant, and why doesn't everyone have these? There's a widely established fact that Roman bathhouses were the social heart of daily life, serving millions across the empire as gathering places that transcended class boundaries, at least in theory. In practice, The best massage tables still go to those who can tip well, and senators have a way of taking up more space in the warm pools than their bodies technically require. But the principle holds: slave and master, baker and bureaucrat, all get naked and sweaty in the same rooms, though they might not actually speak to each other. A curious detail that most people miss: the baths had their own time-keeping system. Not official hours, but a rhythm everyone understood. You could tell the time of day by which rooms were most crowded, by the angle of light through the windows, by whether the massage tables were full or empty. The baths created a shared temporal experience for the entire city, everyone moving through the same sequence of rooms at roughly the same pace, like a very slow, very wet dance. Here's something historians still debate. Did Romans actually get clean at the baths, or did they just move dirt around in increasingly elaborate ways? There's no soap, not in the modern sense. There's oil, which you'll rub on yourself or have rubbed on you, and then there's scraping, which removes the oil and, theoretically, the dirt. But you're essentially cleaning yourself by making yourself oily first, which feels counterintuitive. Some scholars argue the hot water and steam did most of the actual cleaning. Others suggest Romans simply had a different definition of clean than we do. Nobody's quite sure, which is oddly comforting. Even the experts are just making educated guesses about basic hygiene. You're still in the entrance area, and already you can feel your modern sense of personal space beginning to dissolve. Someone brushes past you without apology. A group of men laugh loudly about something you didn't hear. Somewhere deeper in the building, someone is definitely snoring. You can hear it even from here, a wet, rattling sound that echoes off the marble. The afternoon stretches ahead of you like a warm, slow river. You have nowhere else to be. No appointments, no urgency. Just heat, water, and the strange communal ritual of getting clean and then, if you're lucky, falling asleep among strangers who won't judge you for it. In fact, they'll probably join you. You take a breath. The air tastes like minerals and steam. Your body already feels heavier, slower, ready to surrender to whatever happens next. Time to get started. Time to get undressed. Time to figure out exactly what Romans mean by bathing. The Apodyterium is more crowded than you expected. It's essentially a large room lined with niches carved into the walls. Cubby holes where you're supposed to leave your clothes, your sandals, whatever valuables you were foolish enough to bring. The word Apodyterium comes from the Greek for undressing, which is at least straightforward, even if nothing else about this process is. You find an empty niche about shoulder height, which feels like a small victory, until you realize it's sandwiched between a sweaty merchant on one side and what appears to be a very young, very muscular athlete on the other. Both are already naked. Both are completely unbothered by this fact. The merchant is having a loud conversation with someone 3 niches down about grain prices, his voice bouncing off the walls, his belly jiggling slightly as he gestures. The athlete is stretching, preparing for the gymnasium attached to the baths, his body a catalogue of muscles you didn't know existed. You start to undress, trying to maintain some shred of dignity while removing your tunic in a room full of strangers. There's an art to this, apparently, a casual confidence that everyone else seems to possess naturally. You fumble with the fabric. It catches on your elbow. Someone behind you sighs, waiting for you to move so they can access their own niche. You feel like you're failing a test you didn't know you were taking. Here's the thing about Roman attitudes toward nudity: it's complicated. They're not body shy in the way many cultures are, but there are still rules, still hierarchies of exposure. Athletes, expected to be naked. That's normal, even admirable, the body as a tool displayed for function and form. Regular citizens at the baths. Naked is fine, standard, nothing remarkable. But there's still a quality of controlled casualness, a performance of not caring that requires practice. You can't be too interested in other bodies, but you also can't be too obviously avoiding looking. It's a dance, and you're currently stepping on everyone's toes. Your clothes are finally off, folded badly and shoved into the niche. Now comes the next problem, security, or rather, the complete lack of it. The baths are famous for theft. Everyone knows this. Everyone still comes anyway. Some people bring a slave to guard their belongings, which works great if you can afford a slave. Everyone else just hopes for the best and tries not to bring anything too valuable. There's a generally acknowledged truth that the baths employed capsarii, slave attendants specifically tasked with watching the changing rooms, but they were famously unreliable. Petty theft was so common it was basically baked into the bathing experience. You'd lose a sandal, maybe a ring if you forgot to take it off. The playwright Plautus joked about it. The poet Catullus complained about stolen napkins. It was just part of the deal. Cheap entrance fee, nice facilities, probable minor larceny. You spot one of these capsarii now, lounging against a column, looking spectacularly uninterested in preventing crime. He's young, bored, probably thinking about literally anything except the security of your personal effects. You make brief eye contact. He yawns. You decide not to pin your hopes on his vigilance. The room is filling up as the afternoon deepens. More bodies, more noise, more casual nudity than you've experienced in your entire previous life combined. A group of older men enters together, clearly friends, already deep in conversation that doesn't pause for the transition from clothed to unclothed. They've done this 10,000 times. Their bodies are soft, comfortable, marked by years of good meals and afternoon naps. They don't suck in their stomachs or stand straighter. They just exist, easy and unself-conscious, and you feel a small flicker of envy for that comfort. A detail most people don't know. Some Romans wore bathing costumes, especially women when mixed bathing was permitted, which happened occasionally despite various emperors' attempts to ban it. These weren't swimsuits as we'd recognize them, more like loincloths or breastbands. But their existence suggests that not everyone was entirely comfortable with communal nudity, that there was always tension between the public ideal of body confidence and private modesty. The baths were democratizing in theory, but in practice, they were also a daily negotiation of vulnerability and exposure. Someone's dropped their towel near your feet. You bend to pick it up, because even here, basic courtesy exists, and hand it back to its owner, an elderly man with a deeply lined face who nods his thanks without pausing his conversation about aqueduct maintenance. He's talking to the air, apparently, or maybe to everyone and no one. In the baths, you don't always need a specific audience. You just talk, and whoever's interested listens. The question historians still puzzle over: what did Romans do with their body hair? This feels like a trivial concern until you're standing naked in a room full of other naked Romans, and you start noticing the variety. Some men are smooth, clearly depilated, plucked or scraped or treated with some kind of hair removal paste made from ingredients you'd rather not think about. Others are hairy, natural, unbothered. Was there a fashion, a class distinction? A personal preference? The sources don't give us clear answers. Some writers mark men who remove too much hair as effeminate. Other sources suggest that aristocratic Romans depilated regularly. Maybe it varied by region, by decade, by individual whim. Maybe Romans argued about this the way people argue about beards today. You're ready now, or as ready as you're going to be. Naked, slightly cold despite the warm floors, hyper-aware of your body in ways you haven't been since adolescence. The merchant next to you finishes his conversation and waddles toward the inner rooms, his body moving with the confidence of routine. The athlete follows, all controlled grace and efficiency. You take a breath, leave your niche and your belongings and your modern sense of privacy behind, and step deeper into the bathhouse. The noise grows louder. The air grows warmer. Someone laughs, a big, belly deep sound that echoes off the ceiling. Someone else is singing, badly, a popular tune you half recognize. The afternoon is just beginning. The real bathing hasn't even started. You pad forward on warm stone, following the flow of bodies, trying to remember what comes next in this elaborate ritual of Roman cleanliness. Oil first, you think, then scraping. Then the pools, cold, warm, hot, in some order that everyone else seems to know instinctively. You're committed now. There's no turning back without walking past everyone again, collecting your clothes under their amused stares, admitting defeat. So you don't turn back. You keep walking deeper into the steam, into the ritual, into the strange communal experience of getting clean in the least private way imaginable. And somewhere in the distance, that snoring continues, steady as a heartbeat. The next room smells overwhelmingly of olive oil, which shouldn't be surprising but somehow is. It's not the refined, pleasant oil you drizzle on salad. It's thick, slightly rancid, warm from sitting in clay vessels near the heated walls. The smell coats the inside of your nose, mixing with sweat and damp stone and the particular musk of too many bodies in too small a space. You're in what serves as the oiling room, though there's no official designation. It's just an area with benches, with slaves holding oil flasks, with the general understanding that this is where you transition from dry and clothed to slippery and ready for whatever comes next. A well-established historical detail: Romans didn't use soap. The chemistry of soap-making existed. Civilizations around the Mediterranean knew how to combine fats and alkali. But Romans preferred their oil and scrape method, possibly because it was traditional, possibly because olive oil was abundant and cheap, possibly because sometimes people just do things the way they've always done them, even when better options exist. A slave approaches you, a young man with efficient movements and tired eyes. He doesn't ask permission, just begins pouring oil onto your shoulders, working it down your arms with practiced hands. The oil is warm, almost hot, and his touch is impersonal as a doctor's. This is his job, has been his job for years, will be his job until he's sold or freed or dies. He oils dozens of bodies every afternoon, moving through the crowd like a sculptor working clay, shaping Romans into glistening versions of themselves. The oil spreads across your skin in a way that feels both luxurious and vaguely unsettling. You're not sure where to look. The slave is focused on his work, methodical, already mentally preparing for the next person. Around you, other Romans are receiving the same treatment with varying degrees of passivity. Some chat with their oiling slaves, asking about their day, treating them like people. Others ignore them completely, continuing conversations with friends while being oiled like furniture being polished. You try to relax. The oil does feel good in a strange way, warming your skin, making you conscious of your body as a single connected thing rather than a collection of parts. The slave works oil into your back, your legs, even your feet. Nothing is skipped. You're being thoroughly lubricated, prepared for the next stage, which you're beginning to suspect might be less pleasant than this. And then comes the Strigil. It's a curved metal blade, shaped like a question mark, designed specifically for scraping oil and dead skin, and accumulated grime off the human body. The slave produces one from somewhere. They're everywhere in the baths, hanging on walls, clutched in hands, making that distinctive scraping sound that echoes through the complex. He starts on your arm, drawing the blade down in firm, smooth strokes. The sensation is bizarre, not quite painful, not quite pleasant. Somewhere between a scratch and a massage, with the occasional catch where the blade finds a patch of dry skin or a stubborn hair. A quirky historical detail that doesn't make it into most textbooks: wealthy Romans collected the oil and sweat and skin mixture scraped from famous athletes. They'd bottle it, save it, even use it as medicine. The logic, such as it was, held that the bodily residue of strong, healthy men must contain some transferable essence of strength and health. Galen, the famous physician, recommended it for various ailments. Pliny the Elder wrote about it. Rich hypochondriacs rubbed dead skin from gladiators onto their own bodies and believed it helped. Romans were sophisticated in many ways, but their medical theories sometimes ventured into territory that can only be described as deeply weird. The scraping continues. You're back now, which requires you to bend forward slightly. The slave works with the casual efficiency of someone who's done this 10,000 times. Other people nearby are at various stages of the same process, some being oiled, some being scraped, some finished and moving on to the pools. The room is a production line of human maintenance, everyone moving through the same sequence, nobody questioning whether there might be a better way to get clean. You try to make conversation with the slave, more to break the awkward intimacy than anything else. "Busy afternoon," you venture. He grunts something that might be agreement, might be dismissal. His blade catches a sensitive spot under your arm and you flinch. He doesn't apologize, just adjusts his angle slightly and continues. You take the hint and stop talking. Here's something scholars still debate. Did Romans strigil themselves, or was it always done by slaves or friends? The sources are contradictory. Some artwork shows men scraping their own bodies, twisted into awkward positions to reach their backs. Other images show pairs of men helping each other, or wealthy citizens being attended by slaves. Probably it depended on your status, your finances, whether you had friends at the baths that day. But the question reveals something interesting. Roman bathing was both deeply communal and oddly solitary. You were never really alone, but you weren't quite together either. You existed in a strange space of public privacy, naked among strangers, being touched by people you'd never speak to outside these walls. The athlete from the changing room is nearby, being scraped by what's clearly his personal slave, a man who knows his body's geography intimately. They work in synchronized silence. The athlete shifting position without being asked, the slave anticipating which area needs attention next. It's almost beautiful, this wordless cooperation, until you remember it's a relationship of ownership, not partnership. Your own scraping is nearly done. The slave makes a final pass down your legs, taps your shoulder to indicate you're finished, and moves immediately to the next person without waiting for thanks or payment. The service is included in your entrance fee, such as it is. You're clean now, or at least Roman clean, which means you're oil-free and your skin feels strangely raw and sensitive, tingling slightly in the warm air. You look down at yourself. Your skin is pink, slightly irritated but undeniably smooth. The oil is gone. Presumably the dirt is gone too, though you never actually saw any dirt, which makes you wonder if you were dirty to begin with, or if this whole process is just ritual theater, a performance of cleanliness rather than actual hygiene. Around you, the scraping continues. that rhythmic sound of metal on oiled skin, steady as rain on stone. Someone nearby is having their back done, and they're laughing, talking about a dinner party last week where someone's wife said something scandalous about someone else's husband. The conversation is loud enough that everyone can hear, but nobody reacts. Privacy isn't about walls or distance here. It's about selective attention, choosing what to notice and what to ignore. You're ready for the pools now. Your skin is prepared, sensitized, ready to feel every degree of temperature change with heightened awareness. The cold pool, the warm pool, the hot pool. They're waiting somewhere deeper in the complex, and you can hear the splash of water, the echo of voices, the wet slap of feet on wet stone. But first, you need to navigate your way there without slipping on the oiled footprints everyone's leaving on the floor. Small challenges. The baths are full of them. You take a careful step forward, testing your balance, and join the slow migration of glistening bodies moving toward the water. The cold pool waits like a dare. It's a large, rectangular basin sunk into the floor, deep enough that the water would reach your chest if you were standing. The surface is perfectly still except where bodies break it. A man lowering himself in with a sharp intake of breath, another already submerged to his shoulders, eyes closed, face set in an expression somewhere between meditation and endurance. The water is cold, not refreshing cold, not pleasant cold. Actually cold, the kind that makes your body reconsider its life choices. The Frigidarium is usually the first stop after oiling and scraping, which seems designed to maximize shock. Your skin is still tingling, still sensitized, and now you're supposed to plunge into water that's barely warmer than the mountain streams that feed it. Some bathhouses have even colder pools, fed by snow melt or underground springs. This one is just regular cold, which is cold enough. You stand at the edge, watching other Romans make the transition. Some dive straight in with the confidence of daily practice. Others lower themselves gradually, stage by stage, giving their bodies time to adjust, or at least time to process the betrayal. One elderly man sits on the edge, just his feet in the water, and he's been sitting there since you arrived, working up courage or possibly having second thoughts about his entire afternoon. A well-documented fact, Romans believed cold water had serious health benefits. It tightened the skin, improved circulation, strengthened the constitution against disease. Doctors recommended it. Philosophers praised it as character building. The Emperor Augustus supposedly took cold plunges daily, though he was also famous for being sickly, which perhaps undermines the argument slightly. But the principle was sound enough by Roman medical theory. Hot and cold in balance, the body shocked into health through temperature extremes. You decide to commit. Standing here wavering just makes it worse, gives your mind too much time to mount arguments against this decision. You take a breath and step in. The cold hits like a physical force. Your breath catches. Your muscles contract. Every nerve ending in your legs is suddenly awake and filing complaints. You keep moving, forcing yourself deeper, because stopping halfway feels even worse than continuing. The water climbs your thighs, your waist, your chest. Your heart is hammering. Your lungs feel tight. This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. And then, after about 30 seconds of suffering, something shifts. Your body adjusts. Not completely, you're still cold, but the initial shock fades into something more manageable. Almost invigorating, though you'd never admit that out loud. Your skin feels alive, electric. The cold is clarifying in a way the oil and heat weren't. You can feel your pulse in your fingertips, your temples, your throat. Around you, other Romans float or stand, their faces showing varying degrees of discomfort and determination. A man next to you is breathing deliberately, measured inhales and exhales, his eyes fixed on the middle distance. Another is actually smiling, apparently one of those people who genuinely enjoy this. You decide you don't like him. Someone starts a conversation about the grain supply, because apparently no topic is too mundane or too political for the Frigidarium. Another person responds, and soon there's a full debate happening, voices echoing off the vaulted ceiling while everyone's teeth are subtly chattering. Romans debate everything: philosophy, politics, the quality of last week's theater performance, whether the new aqueduct is positioned correctly. The cold doesn't stop them. Nothing stops them. Here's an odd detail most people miss. Some bathhouses had frigidaria so grand they included columns, artwork, even small gardens visible through open windows. The cold plunge wasn't just utilitarian, it was aesthetic, theatrical. You were supposed to suffer beautifully, surrounded by marble and mosaics. Some of the largest frigidaria could hold dozens of people at once, turning the cold plunge into a social event, a communal endurance test where you could prove your Roman-ness through your ability to not complain about the temperature. Your fingers are starting to feel numb. You've been in long enough to prove something to yourself, though you're not sure what. You make your way to the steps, climbing out with as much dignity as possible while your body is actively shivering. The air feels warm now by comparison, even though it's not. It's just that everything is relative, and after the Frigidarium, room temperature feels like a gift. Water streams off your body, pooling at your feet. You're clean now, properly clean, or at least cold enough that you can't think about much else. Other Romans emerge around you, their skin pink and goosebumped, their expressions dazed like survivors of some minor disaster. Someone laughs, that slightly manic edge of relief. Someone else immediately heads back toward the warm rooms, done with cold for the day, possibly forever. There's an ongoing debate among historians. Did Romans start with cold or hot? The sources suggest both approaches. Some people preferred shocking their system with cold first, then gradually warming. Others started warm and ended cold, using the Frigidarium as a final wake-up before leaving the baths. Still others skipped the cold entirely if they were elderly or ill or just not interested in suffering for health. The baths were customizable, a choose-your-own adventure of temperature extremes. But the general pattern most people followed was cold, warm, hot, a gradual heating of the body, with the cold serving as a reset, a shock to prepare you for the comfort to come. You're shivering now, standing in the damp air, watching steam rise from your own skin. Your body is confused, cold on the outside, still warm somewhere deep inside, trying to reconcile the contradiction. Around you, the Frigidarium continues its work. More bodies entering, more sharp gasps, more gritted teeth endurance. The pool's surface shatters and reforms, a constant rhythm of disruption and return to calm. You need to move. Standing still just makes the cold worse. The Tepidarium waits somewhere nearby. The warm room, the transition space, the place where your body can start making emergency adjustments and start to relax. You can hear it, or think you can, voices with softer edges, the particular acoustic quality of a room where people aren't fighting against physical discomfort. Your feet leave wet prints on the stone as you walk. Other prints overlap yours, a palimpsest of footsteps showing everyone's journey through the same ritual. Someone brushes past you, hurrying toward the cold pool with the determination of someone who's procrastinated this part long enough. Someone else is toweling off nearby, though it seems premature. There's still the warm pool and the hot pool ahead, more water, more reasons to stay wet. But you're done with cold for now. Your body has been shocked, tightened, awakened. Your skin feels different, taut, sensitive, almost new. The cold has done something, you're just not sure what, made you tougher, healthier, more miserable, probably all three. You head toward warmth, following the flow of bodies, the trail of wet footprints, the sound of voices that aren't punctuated by chattering teeth. The Frigidarium falls behind you, still doing its work on the next wave of Romans, still offering its particular brand of health through suffering. The afternoon continues. The warmth ahead beckons, and somewhere in your body, your blood is adjusting, compensating, trying to restore balance after the cold's disruption. One temperature extreme down, two more to go. The Tepidarium welcomes you like a warm exhale. It's not hot, not yet, just pleasantly, perfectly warm. The kind of temperature that makes your muscles unclench without you noticing, that turns your breathing slower and deeper without effort. After the shock of the Frigidarium, this feels like mercy. Your body stops fighting, stops bracing against cold, and simply exists in the gentle heat. The room is larger than the cold plunge area, with a shallow pool in the center and benches lining the walls. Light filters through high windows, catching the steam in golden shafts that make the air visible, almost solid. Dust motes drift through these columns of light like tiny planets in slow orbit. Time feels different here, thicker, slower, like honey spreading across warm bread. You lower yourself into the warm pool. The water is body temperature, maybe slightly warmer, which creates a strange sensation of dissolving boundaries. Where does your skin end and the water begin? It's hard to tell. You're warm all the way through now, the last traces of cold chased from your bones. Around you, other Romans float in various states of relaxation, their faces soft, their usual Roman intensity dimmed to something more peaceful. A generally acknowledged truth, the Tepidarium was designed as a transition space, a buffer between temperature extremes. Roman engineers understood that shocking the body too quickly wasn't pleasant or healthy. You needed this intermediate zone, this place where hot and cold met and cancelled each other out, leaving only warmth. It was brilliant design, functional but also luxurious, necessary but also indulgent. The Tepidarium proved that Romans understood comfort not as the absence of discomfort, but as a carefully calibrated experience, a journey through sensation rather than a simple state. The afternoon light has shifted since you entered the baths. It's later now. You're not sure how much later, but the angle is different, more horizontal, painting everything amber and drowsy. The Tepidarium seems to collect this light, holding it in the steam, turning the whole room into a kind of golden haze. Your eyes grow heavy. Your thoughts slow down, spacing themselves out like people on a road with nowhere to hurry. Next to you, a middle-aged man floats with his head tilted back, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. He's either sleeping or doing a very convincing impression of it. His breathing is deep and regular, undisturbed by the conversations happening around him. Nobody seems bothered by this. Sleep in the baths is expected, normal, possibly even the point of the whole exercise. You watch him for a moment, wondering if you should feel envious or concerned, and decide on envious. Here's a curious detail that rarely makes it into the history books. The Tepidarium was where Romans did their socializing. Not the heated debates of the Frigidarium, not the sweaty exercise of the gymnasium, but actual conversation. Slower, more thoughtful, the kind where you could lose the thread halfway through, and nobody minded. People discussed philosophy here, or poetry, or the quality of last season's wine. The warmth made everyone gentler, more willing to consider ideas they dismiss in the cold light of the forum. Some scholars suggest the Tepidarium was where real Roman culture happened, where the public mask slipped just enough to let something genuine show through. A group of men in the corner are playing a game you don't recognize, something involving pebbles and water, with rules that seem to change based on volume of laughter. One of them is definitely cheating, and the others are definitely aware, and nobody cares. The game is just an excuse to sit together in the warm water, to pass time in a place where time has already surrendered. You shift your position, finding a ledge where you can sit half submerged, your shoulders just above water. The boundary between water and air feels perfect against your skin, cool enough to notice, warm enough to enjoy. Your body is still adjusting, still processing the journey from cold to warm, still slightly confused but increasingly content with the confusion. The question historians still puzzle over: why didn't the Tepidarium have a more dramatic architectural presence? The Frigidarium often featured impressive columns and decoration. The Caldarium, the heart room, was typically the grandest space in the bathhouse, but the Tepidarium was usually simpler, quieter, less visually impressive. Some scholars argue this was intentional, that the room's purpose was to provide a blank slate, a neutral space where the body could recalibrate without distraction. Others suggest it was simply practical. Why waste expensive marble and decoration on a transitional space? The debate reveals how little we actually understand about Roman priorities, about what they valued, and why they built the way they did. Someone enters the Tepidarium from the cold side, their skin still pink and goosebumped, their face showing relief as the warm air hits them. They move slowly to the pool, easing themselves in with small sighs of pleasure. The transformation is visible, shoulders dropping, jaw unclenching, the whole body relaxing stage by stage. You remember that feeling from a few minutes ago, though it already seems distant, like something that happened to someone else. The water supports your weight so completely that you barely feel your own body. You're just warmth, just breathe, just the slow drift of thought through a mind that stopped trying to organize itself. Someone is humming nearby. Not a melody exactly, just a sound, a vibration that matches the room's drowsy frequency. Another person responds with a different hum, and for a moment, there's an accidental harmony before they both stop, possibly embarrassed, possibly just finished. You could stay here for hours. Some people probably do, moving between the Tepidarium and other rooms, but always returning here to this perfect warmth, this suspended state. The afternoon is deepening outside, but inside the baths time has become negotiable, optional, a suggestion rather than a rule. Your breathing has synced with the man next to you, the sleeping one, or possibly sleeping one. Both of you inhaling together, exhaling together, your bodies finding the same rhythm without consultation. It's oddly comforting, this unconscious coordination. You're alone in the warm water, but also not alone. Separate, but connected by breath and warmth and the shared project of doing absolutely nothing. The light shifts again, imperceptibly, just enough that the steam looks slightly different, the shadows pool in new places. How long have you been here? 10 minutes. 30. Time in the Tepidarium doesn't accumulate normally. It layers, folds over itself, becomes impossible to measure. But eventually, reluctantly, you know you need to move forward. The heart room waits. The Caldarium, where the real heat lives, where people go to sweat out impurities and occasionally their consciousness. You're not sure you're ready, but readiness doesn't seem to be the point. You extract yourself from the warm water, feeling its reluctance to let you go, feeling your own reluctance to leave. The air feels cooler by comparison, though it's not. Your body is just confused again, just trying to orient itself in a world of shifting temperatures. Other Romans are making the same journey, from cold to warm to hot, following the ancient pattern, trusting the ritual. You join them, leaving the golden twilight of the Tepidarium behind, heading toward heat that's not gentle, not transitional, but absolute. The heat hits you like a wall you can lean against. The Caldarium is hot, properly, seriously, almost absurdly hot. The air itself feels thick, heavy with moisture and warmth that coats your lungs with every breath. Steam rises from the large pool in the center, from the heated floors, from the bodies of Romans who have been here long enough to start sweating in earnest. The walls are slick with condensation. Everything drips. Everything shimmers in the dim, wet light. You step inside carefully, your feet finding purchase on stone so warm it's almost uncomfortable. Almost, but not quite. The heat climbs your body in stages, ankles, calves, thighs, announcing itself incrementally, giving you just enough time to adjust before presenting the next degree of warmth. By the time you're fully inside, you're already starting to sweat, your body responding to the temperature with its own ancient cooling system. The pool dominates the room, larger than the Tepidariums, deeper, with steps leading down into water that steams continuously. Romans occupy various positions around and in it. Some stand waist deep, conducting conversations with the slow, measured pace of people whose brains are gently cooking. Others sit on the submerged steps, just their heads visible above the waterline, eyes half closed or fully closed, faces slack with heat-drunk contentment. A few have claimed spots on the marble benches that ring the room, lying flat on their backs, letting the radiant heat work its way into their muscles and bones. And several, you count at least 4, are definitely, unmistakably asleep. Not the polite dozing you saw in the Tepidarium. Actual sleep with snoring, with the complete abandonment of consciousness that suggests they trust this room and its occupants enough to surrender entirely. One man's mouth hangs open, his chest rising and falling with deep, regular breaths. Another has folded his arms across his chest like a corpse, his face perfectly peaceful. A third is curled slightly on his side on a bench, his body instinctively finding comfort even in sleep. A well-established historical fact, Romans scheduled their entire day around the afternoon heat. Businesses closed, courts adjourned, physical labor stopped. Everyone who could retreated indoors during the hottest hours, and for many Romans, indoors meant the baths. The Caldarium, specifically. This room was where the city came to escape the day's peak temperature by embracing an even more intense heat, fighting fire with fire, so to speak. It's counterintuitive but apparently effective. Outside might be hot, but in here the heat is controlled, humid, almost womb-like. Your body surrenders to it rather than fighting it. You make your way to the pool, descending the steps slowly. The water is hot enough to make you hesitate, to make your skin protest, but not so hot that you can't adjust. This is the paradox of the Caldarium. It's almost too much, always walking the edge of discomfort, but never quite crossing it. Romans calibrated their baths precisely, understanding instinctively where pleasure ended and pain began, and keeping the temperature just on the acceptable side of that line. Submerged to your shoulders, you feel the heat working on every part of you simultaneously. Your muscles unclench, your joints loosen. Tension you didn't know you were carrying dissolves into the water. Around you, the other bathers exist in their own bubbles of heat-induced peace. A senator, you recognize his face from public speeches, floats nearby with his eyes closed, looking exactly as unconscious as the grain merchant next to him. Rank matters less in the Caldarium. Everyone's equally reduced to sweating, breathing, slowly liquefying bodies. Here's an odd detail that most people overlook. The Caldarium was where Romans conducted their quietest business deals. Not the loud negotiations of the Forum or the formal contracts of the Basilica, but the whispered agreements between men too hot and tired to posture. Something about the heat made people honest, or at least less inclined to sustain elaborate lies. Deals struck in the Caldarium were supposedly more binding, more genuine, though this might just be romantic mythology. Still, several sources mention it. Business partners meeting in the heart room, discussing terms between long silences, shaking hands with palms already slippery with sweat. A man near you starts to speak, begins a sentence about something political, then trails off mid-word as if he's forgotten why he started talking. Nobody prompts him to continue. Nobody seems to notice or care. In the Caldarium, incomplete thoughts are normal. Your brain slows down, conserves energy, focuses on the immediate sensation of heat rather than abstract concerns like conversation or logic. You let your head fall back against the edge of the pool. The ceiling above is vaulted, decorated with faded frescoes you can barely make out through the steam. Guards doing something mythological, naked bodies in classical poses. Appropriate decoration for a room full of naked Romans engaged in the ritualized mythology of cleanliness. Everything connects. Everything reflects everything else. Or maybe that's just the heat making you philosophical. The snoring continues, a soft accompaniment to the drip of condensation, the quiet splash of someone shifting position in the water. It's oddly soothing, this evidence of people so relaxed, they've crossed into sleep without ever meaning to. The Caldarium doesn't demand consciousness. It accepts whatever state you bring to it and gently lowers you into the next level of relaxation. A debate among scholars. Did Romans actually benefit from all this heat? Or were they just making themselves uncomfortable for no good reason? Modern research suggests some health benefits: improved circulation, muscle relaxation, temporary pain relief. But Romans believed it did much more: purged toxins, balanced humors, prevented disease, extended life. They built an empire partly on the assumption that regular hot baths made you healthier, stronger, more Roman. Whether they were right is still contested. What's undeniable is that they believed it, and that belief shaped their cities, their schedules, their understanding of what bodies needed to function well. Your own breathing has slowed to match the room's languid pace. In, out, in, out. Each breath slightly labored by the thick air, but not unpleasantly so. Just enough resistance to make you aware of the act of breathing, to make it feel like a choice rather than an autonomic function. Your heart beats slower, heavier, each pulse visible in your temples and wrists. Someone enters from the Tepidarium, bringing a draft of slightly cooler air that makes everyone shift slightly, aware suddenly of the temperature gradient. The newcomer pauses, adjusting to the heat, their face showing the progression from surprise to discomfort to reluctant acceptance. You remember that feeling. It was about 5 minutes ago, though it feels like hours. Time in the Caldarium doesn't pass so much as accumulate. You don't count minutes. You count breaths or heartbeats or the number of times someone shifts position. The afternoon sun is lower now. You can tell by the quality of light seeping through the high windows, more orange than gold, more horizontal than vertical. But that information feels distant, irrelevant to the contained universe of heat and steam and slowly dissolving consciousness. The man next to you, the one who started a political sentence and never finished it, is now definitely asleep. His head has tilted to one side, his mouth slightly open, his breathing deep and even. You watch him for a moment, then let your own eyes drift closed. Just for a second, just to rest them. The heat presses against your eyelids like warm hands. Maybe you could sleep here too. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the whole elaborate ritual of bathing, the cold shock, the warm transition, the heart surrender, has been leading to this giving up, giving in, letting the heat win. Outside the baths, the city continues its business. But in here, in the Caldarium, business has stopped. Ambition has melted. Everyone is just a body in warm water, breathing slowly, existing simply, waiting for nothing in particular. You wake up, or surface back into something resembling wakefulness, without remembering falling asleep. The heat has done its work. Your consciousness dissolved somewhere between thinking about sleeping and actually sleeping, the transition so smooth you missed it entirely. Around you, the Caldarium continues its slow rhythm of breath and dripping water. Nothing has changed, except that you've lost some indeterminate amount of time to the heat. The question is, how long were you out? Could be 5 minutes. Could be 30. The light seems slightly different, more amber, more tired, but that might just be your eyes adjusting. The Romans around you occupy the same general positions, though specific individuals might have changed. That senator might be a different senator. That merchant might be a different merchant. Bodies blur together in the steam and heat, everyone reduced to the same basic components: skin, breath, the occasional snore. Nobody seems bothered by your nap. Nobody's staring at you, judging you, wondering about your character. Because here's what you're learning: sleeping in the baths isn't just acceptable, it's practically mandatory. The entire social structure of the Caldarium is built around the understanding that people will drift off, that consciousness is optional, that the highest form of relaxation is unconsciousness. An established fact acknowledged by multiple Roman writers, the afternoon nap, or meridatio, was a crucial part of daily routine. After the midday meal, before the evening's activities, Romans slept. Sometimes at home in their beds, but often, especially for those without comfortable homes, at the baths. Martial complains about loud snorers in the baths. Seneca writes about the noise of people sleeping and then waking with sudden snorts. The younger Pliny mentions bath sleepers in his letters. It wasn't a secret or a shameful habit. It was just what people did on hot afternoons when work stopped and bodies demanded rest. But there were rules. Unspoken rules, invisible rules, the kind that everyone knows without being taught. You're beginning to piece them together through observation and the occasional embarrassing mistake. Rule 1, snoring volume matters. Light snoring is fine, expected, almost charming. The gentle wheeze of someone deeply asleep doesn't bother anyone. But loud, rattling, wall-shaking snores that echo off the vaulted ceiling. Those get you nudged awake by strangers, or at least subjected to pointed sighs and strategic position shifts meant to disturb your sleep enough to stop the noise. The man on the bench across from you is testing this boundary. His snores are impressive, deep, resonant, almost musical in their regularity. They're approaching the threshold of acceptable volume. A few Romans are glancing his way, their expressions hovering between amusement and annoyance. But nobody's done anything yet. Everyone's waiting to see if he'll naturally quiet down or if intervention will become necessary. Rule 2. Limb placement. You can sprawl, but not so much that you encroach on another person's space. The benches are shared territory, and unconsciousness doesn't excuse spreading out like a starfish. You notice people sleeping in remarkably compact positions, arms folded, legs crossed, bodies curved into themselves. It's the opposite of how you'd sleep in a private bed. This is public sleeping, which requires awareness even in unconsciousness, consideration even while your brain is offline. A curious detail that rarely appears in historical accounts. Romans sometimes used small wooden headrests in the baths, portable pillows they'd bring with them specifically for their afternoon nap. These show up occasionally in archaeological finds. Simple curved pieces of wood, worn smooth from use, sized to fit in a bag or be carried under one arm. They suggest a level of premeditation to the bath napping that's oddly touching. People planned for their public sleep, brought tools to make it more comfortable, treated it as a serious endeavor worthy of preparation. Rule 3. Waking etiquette. If you wake naturally, you don't immediately spring up and leave. That would be jarring, disruptive to the room's collective drowsiness. Instead, you surface slowly, opening your eyes first, then adjusting your position slightly, then gradually sitting up over the course of several minutes. You signal your return to consciousness through degrees, giving everyone time to adjust to your renewed alertness. You're watching this process now in a man near the pool. He's been asleep for at least as long as you were. You remember his position from before your own nap. And now he's beginning the slow journey back to wakefulness. Eyes opening. A long, slow blink. A slight shift of his shoulders. A deeper breath. He's not rushing. Nobody rushes in the Caldarium. Rule 4. Sleepers are protected. If someone's clearly asleep, you don't splash them, don't start loud conversations nearby, don't do anything that might disturb their rest. This protection extends even to strangers, even to people from different social classes. A sleeping slave and a sleeping senator receive the same courtesy in the Caldarium. Sleep is sacred, or at least respected, and disturbing someone else's rest is considered deeply rude. Though this raises an interesting question that historians still puzzle over, what about theft? If you're unconscious, vulnerable in a public place full of strangers, aren't you just inviting robbery? The sources don't give clear answers. Marshall jokes about bath thieves. Catullus complains about stolen items. But nobody mentions sleepers being specifically targeted, which suggests either that sleeping people were protected by social convention, or that Romans were so confident in the bath's relative safety that they could actually relax enough to sleep, or that plenty of napping Romans did get robbed, but nobody bothered writing about it because it was too common to mention. The loud snorer has finally crossed the line. Someone reaches over and gently taps his shoulder, not aggressively, just a soft touch to shift him into a different position. The snoring stops, or rather changes pitch, dropping to a lower, less offensive register. The intervention is so subtle, so practiced, that the snorer probably doesn't even register it consciously. He just adjusts and continues sleeping, while the room breathes a collective sigh of relief. You realize you're thirsty. The heat and sleep have combined to leave your mouth dry, your throat scratchy. But getting up to find water means disturbing your own carefully achieved relaxation, means navigating the social choreography of leaving the Caldarium without being disruptive. It's a calculation. Is the thirst worse than the effort of quenching it? Around you, Other Romans are making similar calculations, or not making them, just existing in their various states of consciousness and unconsciousness. Some are clearly awake but resting, eyes open but unfocused. Others are in that liminal space between sleeping and waking, not quite either, just floating in the heat and steam and drowsy afternoon light. Still others are deeply, properly asleep, committed to unconsciousness in a way that suggests they have nowhere else to be and nothing else to do. The afternoon is aging. The light through the high windows is redder now, softer, the color of late-day exhaustion. Outside the baths, evening is beginning its slow arrival. But inside the Caldarium, time remains negotiable. You could sleep another hour. You could sleep until they close the baths for the night. Nobody would stop you. But something in your body says it's time to move, time to continue the ritual, time to experience whatever comes next. You've been hot long enough. You've slept your mandatory public nap. Your skin is pruned and pink and thoroughly cooked. You sit up slowly, following the proper protocol, giving the room time to adjust to your movement. A few eyes track you lazily, without real interest, just noting that someone's changing position. The snoring continues. The dripping continues. The heat continues its patient work on everyone who remains. Time for the next stage. Time to see what else the baths have to offer besides heat and unconsciousness and the strange comfort of sleeping among strangers. The massage area exists in a kind of architectural afterthought, a side room off the Caldarium, less grand than the main bathing spaces but more intimate, more focused. The sound is different here. Less echo, more proximity. You can hear individual breathing, the slap of oil being worked into skin, the occasional grunt of effort from the masseurs, the even more occasional groan from the person being worked on. Marble slabs line the walls, waist-high platforms where Romans lie in various states of submission while trained hands knead, press, pummel, and generally rearrange their relaxed bodies. Some tables are occupied, others empty, waiting for the next body to claim them. Steam drifts in from the Caldarium, keeping the air warm and humid, keeping everyone's muscles loose and receptive. You approach an empty table with the hesitation of someone who's not entirely sure what they're signing up for. A masseur materializes beside you, middle-aged, muscular in a wiry way, his hands calloused from years of this work. He gestures to the table without speaking. The transaction is wordless, understood. You've paid your entrance fee. Massage is included, though tipping is expected if you want enthusiasm rather than just mechanical efficiency. The marble is warm against your stomach as you lie face down. Heated, like everything else in the baths, but hard despite the warmth. Unforgiving. Your face fits into a small indentation clearly designed for this purpose, leaving you staring at the floor through a marble frame, unable to see what's about to happen to your body. The oil comes first, poured directly onto your back, warm and thick. The masseur's hands follow immediately, spreading it across your shoulders, down your spine, over your ribs. His touch is professional, impersonal, firm. This isn't gentle relaxation massage. This is therapeutic work, the Roman approach to body maintenance, aggressive, thorough, assuming that muscles need to be convinced rather than coaxed into releasing tension. A well-documented historical fact, Roman massage was considered medical treatment, not luxury. Doctors prescribed it. Galen, the famous physician, wrote extensively about massage techniques, categorizing them by pressure and purpose. Athletes received massage before and after exercise. Injured soldiers received it for rehabilitation. Elderly Romans received it to maintain mobility. The masseurs working in the baths weren't just providing comfort, they were healthcare workers, though their social status didn't reflect that importance. Many were slaves or freedmen, skilled but not respected, essential but invisible. The masseur finds a knot in your shoulder you didn't know existed. His thumb drives into it with the subtlety of a spear thrust. You make a sound, not quite a yelp, not quite a groan, somewhere between pain and relief. He doesn't acknowledge it, just continues his work, methodically destroying and rebuilding your shoulder muscles. On the table next to you, another Roman is receiving similar treatment, and he's definitely asleep. You can hear him snoring softly despite the hands working his back, despite the pressure that seems like it should register even through unconsciousness. His face is turned toward you, mouth slightly open, expression blissfully unaware. You wonder if you should be jealous of his ability to sleep through anything, or concerned that he's so unconscious he can't feel what's being done to his body. Here's an odd detail that doesn't make it into most histories. Romans couldn't agree on whether you should talk during massage. Some sources suggest silence was proper, that massage was a time for internal reflection, for letting your mind rest along with your body. Other sources describe lively conversations happening on the massage tables, business being conducted, poetry being recited. Probably it varied by individual preference and social context. But the uncertainty reveals something interesting. Romans were working out in real time what massage meant, how it fit into their social structure, whether it was medical or social or some blend of both. The masseur moves to your legs, and the technique changes. Long, smooth strokes rather than targeted pressure. Your muscles are warm, pliant from the Caldarium's heat, and they respond to his touch like clay being shaped. Tension flows out of your calves, your thighs, your feet. You're melting into the marble slab, becoming part of the table, losing the boundaries between your body and the stone supporting it. Around the room, other Romans are at various stages of their massage experience. One man is sitting up, finished, looking dazed and boneless. Another is just lying down, about to begin, his face showing anticipatory tension. A third is mid-session, his back covered in oil that catches the dim light, making his skin look like polished bronze. The masseurs move between bodies with practiced efficiency, their routine so ingrained they could probably do it blind. The question scholars still debate: were Roman massages painful on purpose, or have we misunderstood the sources? Modern massage often emphasizes comfort, relaxation, pain-free pressure. But Roman writers describe massage as vigorous, even violent. Seneca complains about being beaten during massage. Martial jokes about masseurs who leave bruises. Were Romans just tougher, more willing to endure discomfort for health benefits? Or did they have different pain thresholds, different expectations about what bodies could handle? Or were the complaints exaggerated for comic effect, and most massages were actually quite gentle? Your masseur is working on your lower back now, using his elbow for leverage, driving into the muscles alongside your spine with focused intensity. It hurts. It definitely hurts. But underneath, the hurt is a deeper sensation of release, of things unclenching that have been clenched for weeks or months. You breathe through it, trying to relax into the pain rather than fight it, and slowly, very slowly, your body gets the message and surrenders. The man next to you is still sleeping, still snoring, completely undisturbed by the massage continuing to work his back. You watch him for a moment, fascinated and slightly envious. That's the goal, you think. That's the ultimate achievement of Roman bathing, to become so relaxed, so thoroughly disconnected from vigilance and anxiety that someone can work your body like bread dough and you don't even register it consciously. The room is quiet except for the sounds of work, hands on skin, breathing, the occasional shift of position. Steam continues to drift in from the Caldarium, keeping everything warm and slightly dreamlike. The light is golden red now, late afternoon light that makes everyone look softer, younger, more vulnerable than they probably are. Your masseur finishes with a few final strokes down your arms, then taps your shoulder, the universal signal that you're done. You lie still for a moment, gathering the energy and coordination to move. Your body feels simultaneously worked over and deeply relaxed, sore and loose, like it's been taken apart and reassembled with all the pieces in better positions. Sitting up takes effort. Your head swims slightly from the position change, from the heat, from the thoroughness of the massage. You're oily again, slick and shiny, though not as extensively as after the original oiling. The masseur is already moving to the next table, the next body, the next round of professional violence disguised as healthcare. You stand carefully, testing your balance. Everything works, but slowly, as if your body is operating on a slight delay. The sleeping man on the next table hasn't moved. His masseur has given up trying to wake him and is just continuing the work, treating him like a very relaxed piece of meat that needs tenderizing. Other Romans are finishing their massages, moving back toward the pools or heading to other areas of the bath complex. Some look refreshed, energized. Others look like you feel thoroughly worked over, not quite sure if that was beneficial or just traumatic, but committed to believing it was healthy because that's what everyone says. You need water. Actually, you need several things: water, food, possibly a different kind of rest that doesn't involve being kneaded like dough. The baths have all of these, somewhere in their marble maze of rooms and services. But first, you just need to stand here for a moment, oily and dazed and confused about whether your muscles love you or hate you, while the massage room continues its quiet work on the next round of Romans seeking relief or punishment, or that strange blend of both. You've made it back to one of the warm pools, not the Tepidarium exactly, but a similar space, another intermediate zone where the temperature hovers at that perfect point between comfort and drowsiness. Your body is still processing the massage, still deciding whether those were healing hands or assault weapons disguised as healthcare. The water welcomes you back, warm and familiar, and you sink into it with a sigh that comes from somewhere deep in your chest. For approximately 30 seconds, you have peace. Then the grain merchant arrives. You didn't see him coming, didn't hear him, didn't sense his approach. But suddenly he's there, settling into the water beside you with a series of satisfied grunts. He's older, probably 50s, with the kind of comfortable belly that suggests success in business and regular access to good meals. His face is friendly, open, the face of someone who believes conversations are gifts he bestows on everyone around him. "Quite a day," he says, to you or to the air or to the general universe. His voice carries that particular Roman confidence that assumes everyone wants to hear what he's thinking. You make a non-committal sound, hoping it reads as agreement but not invitation. You're tired, you're relaxed, you're processing a massage that felt like organized combat. You don't want conversation. You want silence, or at least the quiet background murmur of other people's conversations that you don't have to participate in. The merchant doesn't take the hint. The heat's particularly good today. They must have the furnaces running strong. I was telling my business partner, you know Marcus, the olive oil importer. I was telling him just yesterday that the Caldarium's been too cool lately, but today it's perfect. Perfect. An established fact acknowledged by Roman writers, the baths were where business happened. Informal business, the kind that couldn't or shouldn't happen in the forum or basilica. Deals were proposed in the warm pools. Partnerships were discussed between temperature zones. Letters of introduction were shared by naked men who just met 5 minutes ago. Cicero complains about being cornered by favor seekers at the baths. Seneca mentions business negotiations happening while he's trying to rest. The baths were neutral territory, equalizing territory, where the usual barriers of rank and formality dissolved along with everyone's clothes. The merchant is looking at you expectantly, clearly waiting for some response to his observation about furnace temperature. You nod, say something about the heat being nice, and immediately regret engaging. His face brightens. You've become a conversation partner now, a participant rather than an audience. Exactly. Nice. That's exactly what I said to Marcus. The heat, I told him, is nice. Though between you and me, he leans slightly closer, his voice dropping to what he probably thinks is a confidential whisper but is actually still quite audible. Between you and me, I think they're cutting costs on fuel. The evening baths haven't been as warm. I've noticed. You notice these things when you come every day. You make another non-committal sound, a vocal shrug. Around you, other conversations are happening, some animated, some drowsy, all overlapping into a general hum of Roman social life. A senator is explaining something about aqueduct engineering to anyone who'll listen. Two young men are debating the merits of different gladiators. An elderly woman. Yes, women are here now. The evening mixed bathing hour having apparently begun, is describing her daughter's wedding plans with the exhaustive detail of someone who's been thinking about nothing else for months. Here's a quirky detail that rarely makes historical accounts. Romans had a concept called bath friendship, relationships that existed only within the bathhouse walls. You'd have lengthy, intimate conversations with someone every afternoon for years, sharing opinions and gossip and business advice, and never once see them or speak to them outside the baths. These friendships were real but bounded, existing in the specific context of heat and nudity and forced proximity. Some scholars suggest this was a safety valve for Roman society, a way to have honest conversations without the baggage of formal social relationships, to speak freely because bath words didn't count in the regular world. The grain merchant is now explaining the entire history of his business, how his father started with one small warehouse, how he's expanded to 3, how the grain supply from Egypt is unreliable, but the African grain is consistent if pricier. You're not sure why he's telling you this. You're not in the grain business. You have no power to help or hurt his enterprise. But he talks anyway, with the assumption that his story is inherently interesting, that you're grateful for this insight into the grain trade. You look around for escape routes. Could you move to a different part of the pool? That would be rude, obvious. Could you claim you need to visit the cold plunge? Possible, but then you'd actually have to go to the cold plunge, and you're not ready for that again. Could you just close your eyes and pretend to fall asleep? Maybe. The baths do permit that kind of sudden unconsciousness. But the merchant is asking you a question now, something about whether you've noticed the price of bread lately, and you have to respond, because ignoring a direct question crosses some line from peaceful non-engagement into actual rudeness. A bit higher, you venture, which is the safest possible answer to any question about prices in Rome. A bit higher, the merchant practically shouts it, vindicated. Exactly, I told Marcus. The olive oil Marcus, not Marcus the fish sauce distributor, different Marcus. I told him, look at the bread prices, that tells you everything about the grain situation. Because it does, you see. The bread prices, they're like what's the word? A symptom. No, an indicator. They indicate the underlying grain supply issues. A debate among historians. Did Romans actually enjoy these bath conversations, or were they trapped by social convention into participating? The sources are mixed. Some writers fondly describe debates and discussions at the baths, suggesting intellectual pleasure in the exchange. Others complain bitterly about being cornered by bores and having their relaxation disrupted. Probably the truth is somewhere in the middle. Some conversations were welcome, others weren't, and you never knew which you'd get when you entered the baths. It was social gambling, and sometimes you lost. The merchant has now moved on to discussing his son's education, his daughter's marriage prospects, his own uncertain health despite the obviously beneficial effects of daily bathing. He's not asking about your life, you notice. This isn't a conversation in the sense of exchange. It's more like you're a friendly wall he's talking at, a warm body providing the minimal feedback necessary for him to continue his monologue. On your other side, a different man is having a completely different experience. He and his companion are deep in whispered conversation, heads close together, voices too low for you to make out words but the tone suggesting something serious. Business, romance, political conspiracy. The baths contain multitudes, dozens of conversations happening simultaneously at different volumes and levels of intimacy. The senator's aqueduct lecture has concluded. The gladiator debate has gotten heated, voices rising. The wedding planning mother has found a sympathetic audience and is now providing even more granular details about floral arrangements. The afternoon is aging into evening, and the conversations shift with it. Less business, more gossip, the energy changing as wine starts flowing from the Thermopolium, the snack bar where Romans can grab refreshment between baths. The grain merchant pauses to breathe, and you seize the moment. I think I need to. You gesture vaguely toward the other pools, the massage area, anywhere that isn't here. Oh, certainly, certainly. He's unbothered, already looking around for his next conversation victim. We'll continue this later. I have some thoughts about the wheat situation in Gaul you'd find fascinating. You extract yourself from the pool with as much dignity as possible, water streaming off your body, your muscles protesting the movement after they'd settled into warm stillness. The merchant is already engaging someone else, his voice rising with renewed enthusiasm as he begins what sounds like the same grain supply explanation you just endured. Other Romans are navigating similar social choreography, gracefully ending conversations, tactfully moving away from unwanted company, regrouping with friends, seeking solitude in a place where solitude is nearly impossible. The baths are a constant negotiation between community and privacy, between the pleasure of company and the desperate need for silence. You drift toward a quieter corner, a smaller pool with fewer people, hoping for a few minutes of peace before someone else decides you look like a good conversation partner. The evening light is deeper now, almost purple where it hits the steam. Your stomach reminds you it's been hours since you ate. The Thermopolium beckons, promising food and wine and possibly, hopefully, a chance to eat without someone explaining their entire business history while you chew. The Thermopolium sits in a transitional space between the bathing rooms and the outer areas of the complex, not quite inside the heat and steam, not quite outside in the regular world. It's a counter with built-in clay vessels that hold food kept warm by the same hypocaust system heating the floors. Steam rises from these vessels, carrying smells that make your empty stomach clench with sudden, urgent hunger. You didn't realize how hungry you were until you smelled the food. Hours in the baths have a way of suppressing appetite. The heat, the water, the general disorientation of your body being subjected to temperature extremes. But now, standing in front of actual food, your body remembers it hasn't eaten since the midday meal, and that meal was light because you knew you'd be spending the afternoon at the baths. The selection is simple but sufficient. There's porridge, pulse, the Roman staple, thick and grain-heavy. There are sausages, glistening with fat and spices. Bread, of course, several varieties, some still warm. Olives in clay dishes. Cheese, hard-boiled eggs, and wine, lots of wine, in various qualities ranging from drinkable to "you'll regret this tomorrow." A generally acknowledged truth, Romans ate in the baths. Not full meals. That would happen at home, at dinner parties, at proper dining establishments. But snacks, grazing food, fuel to sustain bodies through hours of bathing. The Thermopolium was essential infrastructure, as important to the bath experience as the pools themselves. Some historians suggest Romans burned so many calories through the heating and cooling cycles that snacking was actually necessary, not just indulgent. Your body was working hard even when you were lying still, regulating temperature, compensating for extremes, and all that work required fuel. You point to the sausages, the bread, settle on a cup of watered wine that looks less likely to be vinegar than the cheaper options. The vendor, a middle-aged woman with efficient movements and a face that's seen every possible customer, serves you without comment. You hand over a few small coins. The transaction is wordless, practiced, repeated dozens of times every afternoon. There are benches along the walls, some occupied, some empty. You claim a spot that gives you a view of the bath's interior, while keeping you safely outside the main traffic flow. Other Romans are doing the same, eating standing up, sitting with food balanced on their laps, grabbing bites between bathing sessions or after, refueling before heading home. The sausage is spiced with something sharp and unfamiliar. Maybe pepper, maybe cumin, maybe something you couldn't name. It's good in the way food is good when you're genuinely hungry, intensely, uncritically, perfectly. The bread is dense and filling. The wine is exactly as advertised, watered, mild, drinkable without being memorable. Next to you, two men are sharing a meal and a conversation about chariot racing. The blues versus the greens, the eternal rivalry that Romans take more seriously than most modern people take their politics. One man is passionate, gesturing with a piece of bread, explaining why the blues' new driver is overrated. The other is more measured, playing devil's advocate, but you can tell he's a blues supporter too. They're just debating tactics, not fundamentals. Here's an odd detail that most people miss. Some bathhouses had elaborate thermopolia, essentially restaurants built into the complex, with multiple courses, table service, entertainment. The grandest Thermae in Rome, places like the baths of Caracalla or Diocletian, had dining facilities that could seat hundreds. You could spend an entire day there, exercise in the gymnasium, bathe, eat, attend a poetry reading in the library, bathe again, eat again, and never leave the complex. For some Romans, particularly those without comfortable homes, the baths were more like a second residence, a place where life actually happened while their rental rooms were just where they slept. Your hunger is easing, replaced by a pleasant fullness that makes you drowsy all over again. The combination of heat, massage, food, and wine is predictable in its effects. Your eyelids are heavy. Your thoughts are slow. You could fall asleep right here on this bench, and based on the man slumped against the wall 3 seats down, that's a perfectly acceptable choice. A group enters from outside. New arrivals, not yet bathed, still carrying the energy and dust of the city. They're loud, excited, already planning their route through the rooms. Young men, probably, though it's hard to tell at this distance and through your wine and heat haze. They'll do the cold plunge first, one of them is saying. No, start warm and build up to cold. No, that's backwards. The debate continues as they disappear into the changing rooms. You remember that energy. You had it a few hours ago when you arrived. Now it's gone, replaced by this heavy contentment, this sense of your body being fully satisfied in ways that have nothing to do with ambition or achievement. You're clean, more or less. You're fed. You're warm. What else does a body actually need? The question historians still puzzle over: how did Romans avoid getting sick from eating in the baths? The combination of heat, moisture, and food seems like an invitation for foodborne illness. Yet the sources don't mention bath food poisoning as a particular problem. Maybe Roman stomachs were tougher, more accustomed to bacterial challenges. Maybe the food turnover was fast enough that nothing sat long enough to spoil. Maybe people did get sick regularly and just didn't write about it because stomach troubles were too common to mention. The silence in the sources could mean safety or could mean something so ordinary it wasn't worth recording. You finish your wine, setting the empty cup on the bench beside you. The vendor will collect it later, or a slave will, or it'll just sit there until someone needs the space. The economics of the Thermopolium are opaque to you. Who profits? Who pays? How the vendor affords the space and ingredients. But it works, clearly has worked for generations, will work for generations more until the whole Roman bathing culture collapses under the weight of history and invading armies and changing beliefs about public nudity. But that's far in the future. Right now, in this moment, the Thermopolium is doing its job, feeding Romans, giving them a place to rest between temperature extremes, keeping the social machinery of the baths running smoothly. The chariot racing debate next to you has grown more animated. The men have been joined by a third person who supports the Greens, and now it's 2 against 1, voices rising with competitive energy. Their passion is amusing. These are grown men, probably with jobs and families and responsibilities, arguing like children about which group of horses runs faster. But then, you're a grown person who's just spent 4 hours getting alternately hot and cold and massaged and fed in a public building, so perhaps judgment isn't your strongest position right now. Your body is ready for the next phase, whatever that is. More bathing, probably. The ritual isn't complete yet. You haven't achieved the full Roman bath experience. The perfect balance of temperatures, the ideal state of clean exhaustion, the moment when your body finally says enough and you can go home satisfied. But you're close. You can feel it. A little more warmth, maybe another cold plunge if you're feeling brave, and then the slow wind down toward evening, toward the darkening streets outside, toward home and bed and actual sleep, in a private space where snoring is allowed without volume restrictions. You stand, testing your balance, finding it acceptable if not perfect. The Thermopolium behind you continues its work, feeding, sustaining, enabling the endless cycle of Romans moving through their daily ablutions. The chariot racing debate has devolved into friendly insults. Someone else is ordering food, their voice tired but content. The baths aren't finished with you yet. There are still rooms to explore, temperatures to experience, rituals to complete. But you're grateful for this interlude, this pause in the program where your body got to remember it's a physical thing that needs fuel, not just a temperature regulation project for Roman engineers to experiment on. Back into the heat, back into the water, back into the slow, strange rhythm of communal bathing that somehow works despite, or perhaps because of, its absolute refusal to make sense by any modern standard. You're wandering through a side corridor now, following the sound of different voices. Higher, lighter, distinctly feminine. The baths have shifted while you were eating, the way they shift every day at certain hours, transforming from a male space to a mixed space, or sometimes an exclusively female space, depending on the bathhouse, the city, the current emperor's opinions about morality. This particular Thermae operates on a schedule. Morning through mid-afternoon, men only. Late afternoon into evening, mixed bathing, though with unspoken territorial divisions. Late evening, women only, though by then most of the city has gone home for dinner. It's a careful choreography, a daily negotiation of who gets the water when, designed to maintain propriety while still serving everyone who needs washing. The women's voices echo differently than men's, not just in pitch but in rhythm, in the patterns of conversation. You can't make out words from this distance, but the cadence is distinct. Quicker exchanges, more laughter, a different energy entirely. You're in mixed territory now, that ambiguous zone where both genders coexist, and you're suddenly aware of your body in a way you haven't been for the past few hours. A well-established historical fact, Roman attitudes toward mixed bathing were complicated and constantly changing. Some emperors banned it outright, declaring it immoral, a corruption of public decency. Others ignored the practice, letting bathhouses set their own policies. Hadrian prohibited it. Marcus Aurelius apparently didn't enforce the prohibition. Alexander Severus banned it again. The pattern repeats: restriction, relaxation, restriction, suggesting Romans themselves couldn't agree on whether mixed bathing was harmless socializing or scandalous impropriety. You pass a group of women heading toward the Caldarium, their bodies wrapped in loose cloth, those bathing costumes that some women wear, especially during mixed hours. Not all women, though. Some bathe fully naked just like the men, comfortable or defiant, or simply following their own preferences. The variety suggests that even when rules existed, enforcement was spotty, personal choice still mattered. Social norms were more fluid than the official pronouncements suggested. The women glance at you as they pass, their expressions neutral, unbothered. You're just another body in the baths, just another Roman going through the daily ritual. Gender creates some boundaries here, but they're permeable, negotiable, enforced more by convention than by walls or guards. A detail most people don't know, women's bathing culture had its own rhythms and rituals, somewhat parallel to men's but distinct in emphasis. Women spent more time in the warm pools, less time in the Frigidarium. They used more oils, more cosmetics, more elaborate grooming tools. The Strigil work was gentler, or so the sources suggest. And women's bath conversations focused on different topics: household management, children, the social machinations of marriage politics. Though how much of this is actual difference versus male writers projecting their assumptions onto women's experiences is an open question. You find yourself in another warm pool, smaller than the main Tepidarium, clearly a space that's become informally designated for mixed bathing. Men occupy one side, women another, with a kind of invisible but mutually understood boundary down the middle. Nobody polices this division. It just exists, created and maintained through social consensus and the Roman genius for unspoken rules. A woman near the boundary is talking to a man, husband, brother, friend, unclear from context. Their conversation is casual, comfortable about domestic matters. Planning dinner, maybe, or discussing someone's illness, or coordinating tomorrow's schedule. The kind of practical talk that happens between people who share a life and are using these moments in the baths to synchronize their separate days. The question scholars still debate: did mixed bathing lead to the kind of scandalous behavior emperors worried about? Or were the prohibitions just moral panic, solutions to problems that didn't actually exist? The sources are contradictory. Some writers claim the baths were dens of impropriety, places where married women met lovers, where moral corruption flourished. Others present mixed bathing as completely innocent, just Romans of both genders pursuing cleanliness in parallel. Probably the truth varied by individual, by bathhouse, by social class. Some affairs probably started at the baths. Most bathing probably remained mundane, functional, unscandalous despite the nudity and proximity. You notice that the women here carry themselves differently than the men. More covered, generally, even when naked. Arms positioned to provide minimal modesty, postures slightly closed rather than the sprawling openness some men display. But this might be your modern interpretation, projecting contemporary body consciousness onto Romans who might not have felt what you're imagining they felt. An elderly woman is being helped into the pool by what's clearly her slave, a young girl, barely a teenager, who guides her mistress with practiced care. The old woman moves slowly, her body showing the effects of many decades, and you're struck by the democracy of the baths again. Young and old, healthy and frail, all submitting to the same ritual, all trusting the same waters to do their healing work. The light through the windows is deep purple now, almost violet, the last gasp of afternoon before evening properly arrives. The bath complex is fuller than it was earlier. The after-work crowd arriving, people who couldn't come in the heat of the day, who had obligations and responsibilities, and are only now free to pursue cleanliness and relaxation. A curious detail. Some sources mention female bath attendants, women who oiled and scraped and massaged other women, creating a parallel service industry. But these women are largely invisible in the archaeological record, mentioned in passing in texts, but leaving little physical evidence. Their existence raises questions about women's economic participation, about the gender division of labor in Roman society, about whose work got remembered and whose got forgotten. You're feeling slightly out of place in this mixed space, not unwelcome, but not quite comfortable either. The rules are different here, more complex, requiring awareness of boundaries you're still learning to perceive. The all-male spaces were simpler. Everyone knew what was acceptable, what was expected. Here, the expectations shift depending on who's nearby, who might be watching, who might judge. A group of women enters from the Caldarium, their skin pink from heat, their hair damp, their faces showing that particular combination of exhaustion and contentment that the hot room produces. They head toward the cold plunge, laughing about something, their bodies moving with the confidence of regular bathers who have done this routine hundreds of times. You wonder about their lives outside these walls. what work they do, what homes they return to, what freedoms they have or don't have in a society that's deeply patriarchal, but also weirdly egalitarian in certain contexts. The baths reveal and obscure simultaneously, showing bodies while hiding personalities, creating intimacy while maintaining distance. The mixed bathing hour is limited, you know. Eventually, the men will be asked to leave or move to certain designated areas, and the women will have the complex more fully to themselves. It's a compromise that satisfies no one completely, but works well enough to persist across centuries. Like many Roman solutions, it's practical rather than ideological, focused on function over philosophy. Your body is telling you it's time to move again. The warmth has done its work. Your muscles are loose, your mind is quiet, your skin is thoroughly pruned. The cold pool beckons one more time, a final shock before heading home. Or maybe you'll skip it, go straight to the gentle warm down that precedes leaving, the gradual return to normal temperature that prepares you for the outside world. Around you, Romans of both genders continue their rituals, their conversations, their daily negotiation with heat and water and social norms that shift like steam in the evening light. The baths contain everyone, exclude no one, at least in theory. In practice, there are always hierarchies, always divisions, always invisible lines that some people can cross and others can't. But for now, in this moment, in this pool of warm water with the purple light coming through the windows, you're just another body seeking cleanliness, seeking rest, seeking whatever the baths promise to everyone who pays the entrance fee and submits to the ritual. You've returned to the Caldarium, drawn back by the heat like a moth to flame, or more accurately, like a thoroughly tired Roman to the one place where exhaustion is not just permitted, but encouraged. The room has changed since your last visit. It's more crowded now, bodies packed closer together in the warm pool, on the benches, sprawled on the heated floors. The afternoon slump has arrived in full force, and everyone in Rome seems to have surrendered to it simultaneously. This is the peak hour for bath sleeping, the moment when the city collectively decides that consciousness is optional and possibly overrated. The combination of time, that dead zone between the midday meal and evening activities, and temperature, both outside in the city and inside the baths, creates perfect conditions for mass drowsiness. You can feel it in the air, heavy as the steam, pressing down on everyone with gentle insistence. The snoring is louder now, more varied. You can distinguish at least 3 different snorers, each with their own rhythm and pitch, creating an accidental symphony of unconsciousness. One rattles, one whistles, one produces a sound like distant thunder. Together, they form the soundtrack to the Caldarium's sleepiest hour. An established fact acknowledged across Roman literature, the afternoon slump was universal and unavoidable. Galen writes about it as a medical phenomenon, the body's natural need for rest during the hottest part of the day. Martial complains about it interrupting his work. Pliny the Elder mentions it as common knowledge, barely worth explaining. The Roman daily schedule was built around this slump. Important business in the morning, light obligations after midday, serious dinner parties in the evening. The afternoon belonged to heat and rest, and fighting it was considered foolish, possibly unhealthy. You find a spot on a bench, the last available space, wedged between a sleeping merchant and a senator who's trying very hard to stay awake but clearly losing the battle. His head keeps drooping forward, then jerking back up, his eyes opening briefly before sliding closed again. He's fighting biology and losing, as everyone eventually does in the Caldarium during the afternoon slump. The heat wraps around you like a blanket made of air. Your body, which has been through so much today, cold, warm, heart, massage, food, more heat, finally runs out of resistance. You're not fighting anymore. You're not trying to stay alert, engaged, socially appropriate. You're just tired, deeply and completely tired, and the bench is warm, and the room is full of other people surrendering to the same exhaustion. A quirky detail that rarely appears in historical accounts, some Romans set informal alarm systems for their bath naps. They'd arrange for a slave to wake them after a certain amount of time, or they'd position themselves near the water so that shifting in their sleep might wake them before they slept too long. Others relied on the natural rhythm of the baths, the crowds thinning as evening approached, the temperature dropping slightly as the furnaces were banked, the changing light through the windows. Your body, if you trusted it, would know when it was time to wake, when rest had tipped over into excessive sleep. The senator beside you has given up. His head is fully down now, chin touching chest, breathing deep and even. He'll wake with a sore neck, but apparently that's a price worth paying for this moment of complete rest. On your other side, the merchant hasn't moved in the entire time you've been sitting here. He might be dead, but his steady breathing suggests otherwise. Just deeply, profoundly asleep, having achieved that perfect state of public unconsciousness that the baths exist to facilitate. You let your own eyes close, just for a moment, just to rest them. The heat presses against your eyelids, turning the darkness behind them red-orange, the color of late afternoon filtered through skin. Voices continue around you, but they're distant, muffled, as if you're hearing them through water or thick cloth. Someone's still having a conversation about something political. Someone else is singing again, that same tuneless humming that's been the background music to this entire bath experience. The question scholars still debate: why did Romans build their entire society around accommodating the afternoon slump instead of fighting it? Modern culture tends to value constant productivity, to see afternoon drowsiness as something to overcome with caffeine or willpower. But Romans embraced it, structured their days around it, created elaborate infrastructure, the baths, specifically to provide a comfortable place to surrender to it. Were they wise, recognizing human biological rhythms and working with them? Or were they simply lazy, using the heat as an excuse for daily idleness? The sources don't provide clear answers, probably because Romans themselves didn't think of it as a question requiring an answer. The slump existed. You accommodated it. What else was there to discuss? You're drifting now, not quite asleep but not quite awake, suspended in that liminal space where thoughts become loose and illogical. You're thinking about grain supplies for some reason, probably residual contamination from the merchant's earlier monologue. Then you're thinking about the cold pool, how shocking it was, how your body protested. Then you're not thinking about anything specific, just experiencing sensation. Heat, the hardness of the bench beneath you, the sound of breathing all around you, your own heartbeat slow and heavy in your chest. Time does something strange. It either stops or accelerates, you can't tell which. You might have been sitting here for 5 minutes or an hour. The light through the windows seems different when you notice it again, but whether it's changed or your perception has changed is unclear. A small commotion at the edge of your awareness. Someone's falling off a bench, or almost falling, catching themselves at the last moment with a startled grunt. A few people laugh, not cruelly but sympathetically. Everyone's almost fallen asleep and literally fallen at some point in their bath career. It's a rite of passage, proof that you've truly relaxed, that you've achieved the deep rest that the Caldarium promises. Around you, the city is in stasis. Outside these walls, shops are closed or closing. The forum is quiet. Street traffic has thinned to nothing. Everyone who can be inside is inside, either at home in private rest or here in the baths in communal rest. Rome has pressed pause on itself, acknowledging that some hours are meant for recovery, not activity. Your breathing has synchronized with the room's collective rhythm, in and out, slow and steady, joining the chorus of sleeping and almost sleeping Romans. You're part of something larger than yourself, a daily ritual that connects you to everyone else in the city, to everyone who's ever felt this particular combination of heat and exhaustion and surrender. The merchant beside you shifts slightly, making a sound that might be words or might just be the verbal debris of dreams. He doesn't wake, just adjusts and settles deeper into sleep. The senator on your other side has started to snore, not loudly, just a gentle wheeze that adds to the room's acoustic landscape. You should probably move. Should probably complete your bathing ritual, make your way toward the exit, begin the process of returning to the regular world. But not yet. Not quite yet. The afternoon slump hasn't released you, hasn't given permission to return to consciousness and responsibility. So you sit. You rest. You breathe with the room, sleep with the room, exist in this strange communal trance where everyone's journey through the day has paused at exactly the same point. The heat continues its work. The steam continues to rise. The light continues to change, marking time even when time has stopped mattering. Somewhere deep in the building, the furnaces burn. Slaves you'll never see feed them fuel, maintain the temperatures, ensure the heat stays constant. Their labor makes your rest possible, an uncomfortable truth that Romans seem to accept without much reflection. The baths run on invisible work, on people whose exhaustion doesn't get accommodated with warm pools and comfortable benches. But that thought is too heavy for the Caldarium, too sharp for the afternoon slump. It drifts away, replaced by nothing, by the empty contentment of a body finally getting what it needs: heat, rest, time to simply exist without purpose or plan. The afternoon holds you. The baths hold you. You float in time and temperature, neither awake nor asleep, just present in the most minimal sense of the word. You wake, or surface, or simply become conscious again and you're moving. Not sure when you decided to move, or if you decided at all. Maybe your body just knew it was time, knew that the afternoon slump had reached its conclusion and the next phase was beginning. Your legs are working, carrying you through corridors you don't quite remember navigating, following some instinct or half-remembered architectural logic toward a part of the bath complex you haven't yet explored. The library. Yes, the baths have a library, because of course they do. Romans believed cleanliness and culture went together, that the body and mind should be tended simultaneously. The grander Thermae included libraries, lecture halls, even small theaters. You could wash your body and then wash your mind, scraping away ignorance along with the dirt. The library is quieter than the bathing rooms, but not silent. It has a different acoustic quality. The sound dampened by scrolls and codices, by the wooden shelving that lines the walls, by the particular absorption properties of papyrus and parchment. Light comes from high windows and a few oil lamps, golden and warm, perfect for reading or for pretending to read while actually doing something else entirely. That something else, judging by the room's occupants, is sleeping. At least half the people here are asleep, not even subtly asleep, fully, obviously, unapologetically unconscious. A man in the corner has a scroll open on his lap, his head tilted back against the wall, mouth slightly open, the scroll unread and possibly forgotten. Another sits at a reading desk with a codex open before him, but his head is down on his folded arms, and he's breathing with the deep rhythm of genuine sleep. A third has stretched out on a bench clearly meant for sitting, using his toga as a blanket, fully committed to the nap. A generally acknowledged truth from multiple Roman sources, libraries in the baths were notorious napping spots. The combination of factors was irresistible. Quiet space, comfortable seating, the intellectual alibi of "I'm here to raid," and the residual warmth from the heating system that extended throughout the complex. Scholars joke about it. Satirists mock it. But everyone did it, apparently, from actual intellectuals to illiterate laborers who just wanted a quiet place to rest away from the crowds in the bathing rooms. You pick up a scroll from a nearby shelf, more as a prop than from genuine reading interest. The text is philosophy, stoic, judging by the first few lines you can make out in the dim light, something about virtue and the proper ordering of the soul. Dense, abstract, exactly the kind of thing that would put you to sleep if you weren't already fighting to stay conscious after hours in the heated rooms. You settle into a chair near the window where the light is best. The scroll sits in your lap, open but unread. Around you, other Romans maintain the fiction of intellectual engagement while actually resting. It's a collective performance, everyone pretending to be here for edification while actually being here for sleep. Here's a curious detail that most historians gloss over: Bath libraries had specialized collections. Not comprehensive, not academic, but focused on popular literature and practical texts. Poetry, lots of poetry, Virgil, Ovid, Horace, the greatest hits of Roman literature. Philosophical works, but the accessible ones, the kind you could dip into without extensive background. History, biography, comedy. Nothing too dense, too technical, too specialized. The goal was enrichment, not scholarship. Cultural literacy, not academic rigor. A few people in the room are actually reading. You can tell by their eyes moving across the text, by the way they occasionally turn to a new section of scroll or flip a page in a codex. One elderly man is fully engaged, his lips moving slightly as he reads, completely absorbed. But he's the exception. Most people here are engaged in what might be called scholarly meditation, which is to say they're staring at texts without processing them, letting the words blur into shapes, using reading as a socially acceptable form of doing nothing. The question historians still puzzle over: did Romans actually become more cultured, more educated through these bath libraries? Or were the libraries just expensive decoration, a way for emperors and wealthy patrons to seem magnanimous without actually advancing public education? Probably both, depending on the individual. Some Romans genuinely used the libraries, borrowed scrolls, engaged with literature they couldn't afford to own personally. Others just slept near the books, absorbing culture through proximity if not actual study. Your own eyes are growing heavy again. The scroll in your lap is a prop that served its purpose, given you permission to be here, to occupy this space, to rest without admitting you're resting. The text swims in and out of focus. Something about virtue being its own reward. Or maybe virtue requiring effort. Or maybe you've lost the thread entirely and are just looking at words without meaning. A slave enters, one of the library attendants, responsible for maintaining order and retrieving scrolls for patrons who actually want to read. He surveys the room with an expression of weary familiarity. He's seen this before, sees it every afternoon. A library full of sleeping Romans pretending to be intellectuals. He doesn't wake anyone, doesn't enforce any rules about the proper use of reading spaces. He just straightens a few scrolls, adjusts a lamp wick, and leaves as quietly as he entered. Nearby, someone is whispering. Two men, heads close together, having a conversation in the hushed tones libraries require even when half the occupants are unconscious. You can't make out the words, but the cadence suggests business, negotiation, the kind of private discussion that needs a quiet, neutral space. The library provides cover. If anyone asks what they were doing, they were reading, studying, pursuing knowledge. The conversation is just incidental. An odd detail that rarely makes historical accounts. Some Bath libraries employed readers, slaves or freedmen who would read aloud for groups, performing literature for patrons who were illiterate or just preferred to listen. These performances happened at scheduled times, advertised throughout the complex. You could time your bath routine to coincide with a reading of the Aeneid or a selection from Ovid's Metamorphoses. It was entertainment and education combined, another layer of service that the baths provided. Your head is drooping. The scroll slides slightly on your lap, and you catch it automatically, adjusting your grip without opening your eyes. You're not asleep exactly, just resting, just sitting quietly in a library, holding a scroll, breathing slowly, being the kind of Roman who values culture and learning enough to visit the library section of the baths. The fiction is paper thin, but everyone maintains it. The library preserves its dignity as a place of intellectual pursuit while functioning primarily as an upscale napping room. The scrolls remain on their shelves, mostly unread but profoundly important as symbols, as justification, as evidence that Romans cared about more than just physical cleanliness. Someone's snoring now, one of the fully committed sleepers, past the point of maintaining pretense. The sound is soft, rhythmic, almost musical in its consistency. Nobody reacts. In the Bath library, snoring is just another sound, like pages turning or scrolls being unrolled, or the distant splash of water from the bathing rooms. The light through the windows is changing again, getting lower, more orange, painting everything in warm tones that make the whole room look like it's underwater or perhaps in amber. Time is passing, though you're not tracking it, not concerned with it. The afternoon is aging into evening, but that's someone else's problem. Right now, you're in a library with a scroll looking intellectual, and if your eyes happen to be closed, well, that's just deep reading, profound meditation on the text. Your breathing slows to match the room's collective pace. In and out, in and out. The scroll grows warmer in your lap, heated by your body or perhaps by the ambient warmth that pervades every corner of the bath complex. Your fingers loosen their grip. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. Outside these walls, evening is beginning its arrival. Inside, in the library, time has stopped meaning much of anything. People raid or don't raid, sleep or don't sleep, exist in that comfortable space between active and passive, engaged and disengaged. The Stoic philosopher in your lap continues discussing virtue, unread but present, doing his job as cultural backdrop to Roman rest. Somewhere in the text, he probably discusses the importance of rest, of balance, of knowing when to act and when to simply be. But you're not going to find that passage today. You're just going to sit here, Scroll in lap, eyes closed, breathing slowly, being a Roman at the baths in the late afternoon, when culture and exhaustion meet in perfect, drowsy harmony. The library releases you eventually, or you release yourself, the distinction unclear. Time has become negotiable, memory unreliable. You're moving again, back through corridors that feel familiar now, worn smooth by your repeated passage, by the passage of thousands of Romans before you who have walked this same route through the daily ritual of bathing. The complex feels different as evening settles in. Quieter, somehow, despite still being occupied. The energy has changed from the afternoon's heavy drowsiness to something gentler, more contemplative. People are finishing their routines, beginning the transition back to the outside world. The desperate need for sleep has passed. Now comes the slow process of preparing to leave, of returning to consciousness and responsibility. You find yourself back in the Tepidarium, always the Tepidarium, that perfect middle ground, that buffer zone between extremes. The warm pool welcomes you like an old friend. The water is slightly cooler than earlier, you notice, or perhaps your body has just adjusted, recalibrated its sense of what's hot and what's not after hours of temperature manipulation. There are fewer people here now. The afternoon crowd has dispersed, gone home for dinner, moved to evening obligations, simply finished their bathing and left. Those who remain have the unhurried quality of people with nowhere else to be, or at least nowhere they're rushing toward. An elderly couple sits together on the pool's edge, feet dangling in the water, having a quiet conversation punctuated by long, comfortable silences. A lone bather floats in the center, eyes closed, face peaceful, conducting some private meditation. A well-established historical fact, evening bathing had a different character than afternoon bathing. More intentional, less frantic. The afternoon bath was necessary, driven by heat and social expectation. The evening bath was chosen, leisurely, almost luxurious in its lack of urgency. Those who bathed in the evening were either devoted bath enthusiasts or people whose work schedules didn't permit afternoon visits. The evening crowd was smaller, quieter, more appreciative of the experience. You lower yourself into the water one more time, and it feels different than all the previous times. Your body knows this water now, trusts it, moves into it without hesitation. The shock is gone. The novelty is gone. What remains is simple comfort, the kind that comes from repetition and familiarity. The light through the high windows is almost gone. Just the last traces of sunset, deep purple fading to blue-black, stars becoming visible in the darkening sky. Oil lamps have been lit around the room, their flames steady and golden, casting shadows that dance and flicker on the wet walls. The atmosphere shifts from natural to artificial light, from day to night, from public time to private time. Here's an odd detail that rarely makes historical accounts. The evening transition was when the baths felt most Roman, most themselves. During the crowded afternoon hours, they were functional, serving masses, processing bodies through the routine efficiently. But in the evening, with fewer people and softer light, they became almost sacred. The ritual slowed down, became more deliberate. People stayed longer in each room, moved more thoughtfully between temperatures, paid more attention to the sensations rather than just rushing through the sequence. A man enters from the Caldarium, his skin flushed pink from heat, moving slowly, carefully, like someone relearning how to walk. He's been in the hot room for a long time, you can tell, probably fell asleep there, probably woke up pruned and dizzy and unsure what year it is. He eases into the Tepidarium's warm pool with visible relief, his body grateful for the lower temperature, the chance to cool down gradually. You realize you're genuinely clean now. Not Roman clean, with its questionable reliance on oil and scraping, but actually clean in some deeper sense. The hours of water and heat have done something to you, stripped away more than just dirt. You feel lighter, emptier, like you've left something behind in the pools and steam rooms. Tension, maybe. Worry. The accumulated weight of being a person with thoughts and responsibilities and concerns about the future. The question scholars still debate: did the evening bath complete the day or begin it? Roman dinner parties often started late, well after sunset, running into the night. So evening bathers were either ending their day with a final cleansing or preparing for the evening's activities with a fresh start. The sources suggest both interpretations coexisted, that Romans themselves didn't have a unified understanding of what the evening bath meant. It was personal, variable, dependent on individual schedules and preferences. The elderly couple has left, helping each other up from the pool's edge with gentle hands and patient movements. They're replaced by no one. The space just stays empty, the pool quieter without their presence. Fewer people means fewer conversations, less ambient noise. You can hear individual sounds now: the drip of water from a ceiling crack, the hiss of oil lamps, your own breathing, the lap of small waves against the pool's edge when anyone moves. You're not in a hurry to leave. The outside world doesn't appeal yet. The cooling streets, the walk home through darkening neighborhoods, the return to your regular life with its regular concerns. Here, in the warm water, in the soft lamplight, you're suspended between day and night, between the person you were when you arrived and the person you'll be when you leave. A curious detail: some Romans bathed twice daily, afternoon and evening, treating it like meals, regular fuel for the body. The sources mention this practice without judgment, suggesting it was common enough not to be remarkable. Bathing wasn't just hygiene or relaxation. It was maintenance, a way of keeping the body running smoothly, like oiling a machine or watering a plant. Twice daily bathers were serious about their physical upkeep, or possibly just really enjoyed baths. You're doing the math in your head. You've been here for hours. 4, 5. Time has been slippery, but the sun was high when you arrived and now it's gone, so it's been most of the afternoon plus evening's beginning. That's normal, apparently. A proper bath took time, couldn't be rushed. Romans who tried to speed through the routine missed the point entirely. The lone floater in the center of the pool has opened his eyes and is swimming slowly toward the edge. His movements are languid, unhurried, like someone moving through a dream. He climbs out without looking at you or the few other remaining bathers, wraps himself in a towel, and disappears toward the changing rooms. One fewer person in the Tepidarium. The space grows quieter still. You should probably leave soon. Should probably begin your own exit routine. One last cold plunge, maybe, to wake yourself up for the walk home. Or skip the cold and just slowly migrate toward the Apodyterium. Reclaim your clothes. Transform back into a regular Roman with places to be and things to do. But not quite yet. A few more minutes in the warm water, in the lamplight, in the quiet that's descended over the bathhouse like a gentle blanket. The baths have given you what you came for. Cleanliness. Yes, but also rest, escape, a break from the relentless pace of Roman daily life. You're grateful in a way you didn't expect to be when you arrived all those hours ago. The water supports your weight completely. Your body floats, weightless, muscles loose, mind quiet. Outside, evening continues its arrival. Inside, in the warm pool, you exist in a pocket of time that belongs to no particular hour, no particular obligation. Eventually, inevitably, you'll have to leave. But not yet. Not quite yet. Eventually, your body decides it's had enough water, enough heat, enough of this suspended state between activity and rest. You pull yourself from the warm pool with arms that feel heavy, waterlogged, like they've absorbed more than their fair share of the Tepidarium's offerings. Water streams off you, pooling at your feet, and you stand there for a moment, dripping, adjusting to air instead of water, to the slight coolness that comes with evening even inside the heated baths. The changing room is nearly empty. Most of your fellow afternoon bathers have already left, transformed back into clothed citizens and disappeared into the city. The Capsarius is still there, the same bored attendant from hours ago, or maybe a different one, impossible to tell. He barely glances at you as you approach your niche, as you discover with relief that your belongings remain untouched, unstolen, exactly where you left them in what feels like another lifetime. Your clothes feel strange against your skin. Rough, confining after hours of naked freedom. The fabric catches on damp patches you didn't dry thoroughly enough. You fumble with the tunic, with your sandals, with the simple act of dressing that's somehow become complicated. Your body has forgotten how to be clothed, has to relearn the weight and restriction of fabric. Around you, the few remaining bathers are conducting the same transformation. A man struggles with his belt, his fingers clumsy. Another sits on a bench, just holding his sandals, staring at them like he's forgotten their purpose. Everyone is moving slowly, reluctantly, bodies protesting the return to normalcy. An established fact from multiple Roman sources, leaving the baths was always harder than entering them. The transition back to regular life felt jarring, almost violent, after hours of warmth and relaxation. Writers complain about the shock of evening air, the immediate return of worries and obligations, the way the outside world crashed back into consciousness the moment you stepped outside. The baths were a bubble, and leaving meant bursting it. You make your way toward the exit, following the same route you entered by, but reversed, backward, like rewinding your afternoon. The corridors feel longer now, or maybe you're just moving slower, your water-heavy body dragging itself toward the inevitable. Other bathers drift past you in both directions, some arriving late, still fresh and energetic, others leaving like you, transformed into soft, slow-moving versions of their former selves. The entrance hall appears. The same entrance hall where you started, though it looks different in lamplight, shadows pooling in corners, everything softer and less defined. You can see the street beyond the open doors, the darkening sky, the first stars emerging. The outside world, waiting. Rome, continuing without you, having conducted a full afternoon's business while you floated and steamed and slept in the baths. You step outside. The evening air hits you like a physical thing, cooler than you expected after so many hours in heated rooms. Not cold exactly, but enough of a contrast that your body notices, registers complaint, starts making adjustments. Your skin prickles. You take a deeper breath, filling your lungs with air that tastes different than bath air. Less mineral, less damp, carrying the scent of evening cooking fires and street dust, and the particular smell of Rome in early autumn. The streets are quieter than when you arrived. Shops are closing or closed, their shutters drawn, their day's business concluded. People move with evening purpose, heading home for dinner or toward dinner parties or to evening entertainments. The frantic energy of afternoon has dissipated, replaced by something more measured, more intentional. You join the flow of people, walking without particular urgency, letting your body find its rhythm. Your muscles are loose in a way they haven't been in weeks, genuinely, deeply relaxed. The massage worked, or the heat worked, or the combination of everything worked. Your shoulders sit differently. Your back feels longer. Even your feet seem to contact the ground more softly, as if the hours of warm water taught them how to walk properly. Here's a curious detail that most people overlook. The evening streets after the baths had a particular quality, a specific atmosphere that Romans recognized and appreciated. Everyone walking home had been through the same ritual, carried the same relaxation, moved with the same languid grace. The city slowed down in the evening partly because everyone was literally too relaxed to rush. The baths set the pace for evening Rome, transformed the population into softer, gentler versions of their morning selves. You pass other bath-goers heading in the opposite direction, their faces showing that particular clean and tired expression you're probably wearing yourself. A few nod in recognition, that wordless acknowledgement of shared experience. You were all in the baths. You all survived the temperature extremes, the massage violence, the communal napping. You're all heading home now, clean and exhausted and strangely content. The question historians still puzzle over: did Romans actually sleep better after their afternoon bath naps, or did napping at the baths interfere with nighttime sleep? The sources don't provide clear answers. Some writers suggest the bath routine improved overall sleep quality. Others complain about lying awake at night after sleeping too much in the Caldarium. Probably it varied by individual. Some people needed the afternoon nap to function, others found it disrupted their normal rhythms. But the practice persisted for centuries, suggesting most Romans found a way to make it work. The walk home is taking longer than usual, not because the distance has changed, but because you're moving slower, stopping more frequently, letting yourself be distracted by things you'd normally ignore. A cat crossing the street, the sound of laughter from an open window. The way the sunset's last light catches the top of a building, turning the stone gold. Your mind is quiet enough to notice small things, present enough to appreciate them. You realize you're hungry again, despite the earlier snack at the Thermopolium. The baths have that effect. They wake up your body's needs, make you aware of hunger and thirst, and the basic requirements of physical existence. You'll eat when you get home, something simple probably, whatever's waiting or whatever you can quickly prepare. And then maybe sleep. Real sleep, in a bed, in darkness, without anyone snoring nearby or splashing in pools. An odd detail: some Romans carried small vials of bath water home with them, water from the Caldarium or Frigidarium, believing it retained therapeutic properties even outside the bath complex. This seems to be one of those folk practices that coexisted with official medicine, not endorsed by doctors, but not forbidden either, just something people did because it felt right or because their grandmother had done it. The water probably had no special properties once removed from context, but belief is its own kind of medicine. The street narrows, becomes more residential. Fewer shops, more doorways leading to private spaces. You're close to home now, to your own small room or apartment or house, depending on your station. The day is almost over. The bath routine is complete. You've been cold and warm and hot and massaged and fed and half-drowned in various pools. You've slept publicly, read without reading, floated without purpose. Your body feels different than it did this morning. Looser, yes, but also somehow newer, like it's been renewed or refreshed, or at least thoroughly processed. The baths have done their work, whatever that work actually is. Cleansing, certainly. Relaxation, definitely. But something more too, some kind of reset, some return to a more basic version of yourself before the day's accumulated tensions and worries could take permanent hold. You reach your door. Your hand finds the latch automatically, muscle memory operating while your mind is still half floating in warm water. The threshold awaits. The transition from public to private, from bathed to regular, from Roman participating in communal ritual to individual preparing for sleep. You step inside. The door closes behind you, shutting out the evening street, the cooling air, the last traces of the bath's influence. You're home now, truly home, ready for whatever remains of the evening before sleep claims you properly, privately, in darkness and silence. The baths are behind you. Tomorrow, they'll be waiting again. Same pools, same heat, same ritual, but that's tomorrow's concern. Tonight you're clean, you're tired, you're home. The day is done. The bath is done. The long, slow, strange journey through Roman hygiene and communal napping has reached its natural conclusion. Outside, Rome continues into night. Inside, you begin the final preparations for sleep, carrying the bath's warmth with you, letting it ease you into darkness, into dreams, into the deep rest that follows hours of public relaxation. The ritual is complete. The day can finally, properly, peacefully end. And now, as you settle into your own bed, your actual bed, private and dark and blessedly free of snoring strangers, let everything from today dissolve like steam rising from warm water. Each breath comes slower now, deeper. Your body remembers the Caldarium's heat, the Tepidarium's perfect warmth, even the Frigidarium's shocking cold. But those are just memories now, gentle ones, softening at the edges as sleep approaches. Your muscles have learned something today about letting go, about surrender, about the difference between being tired and being truly, deeply relaxed. The sounds of Rome fade outside your window. Distant voices, footsteps on stone, the occasional cart rumbling past. But they're far away, filtered through the gauze of your drowsiness, becoming background music rather than disturbance. You're safe here. You're clean here. There's nothing left to do tonight except breathe and drift and let the day finally, completely release its hold on you. Your skin still carries the memory of water. Cool water, warm water, hot water. All those temperatures layered on top of each other like translucent paint. The massage is a ghost in your muscles, a pleasant soreness that speaks of attention, of being touched and tended to, of your body receiving the maintenance it needed. Even the oil and scrape feels distant now, just another sensation in a day full of sensations, none of them sharp enough to keep you awake. Think of the baths settling into their own nighttime quiet, the pools growing still without bodies to disturb them, the furnaces being banked for the night by slaves whose names no one recorded. The marble cooling degree by degree, releasing the day's accumulated heat back into the Roman darkness. The whole complex exhaling, resting, preparing to do it all again tomorrow when the sun returns and the city fills with bodies needing cleanliness and rest. But that's tomorrow. That's always tomorrow. Right now, there's only this moment. You, warm under covers, your body finally understanding that it's allowed to stop moving, stop adjusting, stop processing temperature changes. Your mind is quiet in a way it hasn't been since morning, before the day made its demands, before you had to be alert and social and appropriately Roman. The stars outside are the same stars that shone through the bathhouse windows. The night that's settling over Rome is settling over you too, gentle and inevitable as water finding its level. Your breathing matches some ancient rhythm, in and out, steady as tides, old as the first person who ever discovered that warm water and rest could heal more than just dirty skin. You are clean. You are warm. You are home. You are safe. There's nothing more to achieve tonight. No more rooms to visit, no more temperatures to endure, no more rituals to complete. The bath gave you what it promised. Not just cleanliness but transformation, the chance to shed the day along with the dirt, to become briefly unburdened, to remember that sometimes the most important thing a body can do is simply rest. Let your thoughts float away like oil on water. Let the day's conversations dissolve into pleasant murmur, words without meaning, just the comfort of having been among people, of having shared space and warmth, and the odd intimacy of public bathing. The grain merchant, the senator, the sleeping scholar, the massage therapist, they're all characters in a story that's ending now, fading into the comfortable darkness behind your closed eyes. Your heartbeat slows. Your breathing deepens. The boundary between waking and sleeping becomes thin, permeable, easy to cross. You're drifting now, properly drifting, the way you drifted in the Tepidarium's warm water, supported and safe and surrendering to something larger than choice or will. Rome sleeps around you. The baths sleep. The pools hold their water in darkness, patient and waiting. And you're already halfway to dreams, to that place where the day's experiences become material for something stranger, softer, less literal than memory. Tomorrow, if you want, you can do it all again. The cold shock, the warm transition, the heart surrender. The oil and scraping, the massage, the afternoon slump, the communal nap among strangers who become, for a few hours, companions in rest. The baths will be there, constant as sunrise, offering the same ancient ritual to new generations of tired Romans seeking the same old comfort. But tomorrow is impossibly far away. There's only now, this bed, this darkness, this breath and the next breath, and the one after that, each one slower and quieter than the last. Sleep well, traveler. You've earned it. You've been cold and hot and warm and massaged and fed and half-drowned and fully relaxed. You've participated in a ritual older than empires, simpler than philosophy, more sustaining than any single meal or conversation or achievement. You've bathed. You've rested. You've come home. Now sleep. Just sleep. The night is gentle. The darkness is kind. And somewhere in the depths of Rome, the bath waters wait, patient and warm, for tomorrow's bodies, tomorrow's rituals, tomorrow's communion of tired Romans seeking the same timeless comfort you found today. But that's tomorrow's story. Tonight there's only sleep, sweet dreams.